Hi everyone, welcome to episode 61 of the Mind Blown Zone. This one is called Introduction to the Nova Gaia Timeline. Here with Brad. How are you, Brad?
Surprisingly, as always, never better. How about yourself?
Well, got to be never better, mate, because this is season 2, episode 1. Yeah,
Yes.
60 episodes, season 1. That's how we do things over here.
We have long seasons. This one's going to be even longer.
Yeah. Is it?
For show. For show. For show.
Okay. I wasn't aware. I thought it would just be 60 again. So,
We're going to go for
this is a pretty special episode, and all will be made clear in the bumper script. Ready for me to lay this down?
Let it happen. Let's hear it.
All right, here it comes. Something is shifting. You've sensed it, and others around you are sensing it too. Never before have we been able to so acutely sense the contrast between the dark and the light. We seem to be experiencing the energy known as Nova Gaia, or New Earth. And by contrast, we're able to identify more clearly than ever the Vetus Gaia, or Old Earth energy. Why is this happening, and what are the ramifications? Each of us now has a clear choice: to remain on the Vetus Gaia timeline or join the Nova Gaia timeline. In this podcast, the first of season 2 of the Mind Blown Zone, we succinctly introduce the Nova Gaia timeline and presage the road ahead of us.
Ooh, presage. Big words.
Yeah, one of my favorite words from high school. I always thought that one was cool.
Presage. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting one.
Yep.
We're going to stretch minds tonight.
So right before we started this, you said you wanted to include an emergency section right at the beginning, section 0. You want to take us through this?
It wasn't in our original outline, but it's something I'm actually writing a little booklet with a lot more detail here for people who want more information. But that's forthcoming. I'm not selling that or anything now, but from that, there are 2 ideas that are in there that I wanted to make sure we at least touched on. Right. And I think you hit the first one in the bumper, just that everybody's sensing that something strange is going on, and almost nobody can really put their fingers on it. It's very hard to explain, right? Like if you say, well, what's off or what seems different to you? Most people really can't say what it is, which is, why we're doing this podcast. And, but I think if you talk to most people, you're going to get that kind of feedback. There'll be some particular things, right, that can point to, but there's just this general sense that things aren't as they've always seemed to be. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, we'll be making the point that that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And maybe that's the, kind of the comfort that people need to hear, certainly who listen to this podcast and our ensuing podcasts, is that maybe the things being off is actually a good thing. And that's what we're going to, again, try to get across to everybody in this podcast. And the other idea, just it's a big part of the book, but what I do is go into a lot of what I this section of my book, which I call inexplicable anomalies. And we've talked about a bunch of them in previous podcasts. And it's just more or less examining the, establishment narrative on a wide variety of things that have been happening, particularly in the last year and a half. So this is, July 2026. And it's really been becoming more and more noticeable that things just aren't adding up, and it's hard to understand what's going on. So I just wanted to get those ideas across to people that if you're noticing those things, it's a good thing, and it should be happening, and there's a purpose behind it. Yeah?
Sounds good to me.
Right.
Okay, ready to crank into section 1?
Yeah.
All right. So if we're going to be talking about timelines, Vetus Gaia timeline and Nova Gaia timeline, better define what a timeline is. Mm-hmm. So this section here is going to be almost exclusively Brad. So he's had a lot of research and study into this topic of timelines. So why don't you tell us all about it, Brad?
Well, yeah. So and everybody's heard about this in one way or another. So let me at least toss out these ideas first. That for 50 years or so, that it's been in the collective consciousness, at least, this idea of the age of Aquarius. Right. I think that got identified with some music and the hippie culture and drugs and the new age and blah, blah, blah. It's back in the 1960s, 1970s. And that's what this Nova Gaia timeline is. And that's what the word, when people speak of new age anything, right? That's what, again, new earth, Nova Gaia, new age, it's all synonymous. And, even Trump has been noted as saying, he's talked about the golden era or the golden age that's upon us. And he's mentioned that a few times in various speeches that hasn't gotten any press or anything, but everybody's pointing, all these ideas are pointing to the same thing, right? Is that there's effectively a shift, and you can call it a shift in consciousness. But I think maybe the easiest way for people to understand this is via the idea of a dimension, which we also kind of have to define. I think people think of dimensions as different places, but they're really not. They're kind of different frequency boundaries. Is the best way I can describe it. So there are, obviously low frequencies and high frequencies. And even though it seems like we were all in the same dimension, like when you're happy, right, and the person you're talking to is sad, right? You'll, if you've ever experienced this before, which everybody has, you'll notice there's a difficulty in the communication between, when someone's really depressed and someone's, really happy, right? That's like they can't communicate. And that's because they're literally occupying different dimensions. Now, we can't see the dimensions or sense them in any other way than how we're feeling. You follow me so far?
Yeah, I mean, like people will say this, they go, oh, it's just like they're in a different dimension to me. Just can't. Because they're just not hearing anything I say.
Right. They literally are. And this applies to even the consciousness lenses we talked about in episode 59. Same idea, right? When a person is down in the lower consciousness lens levels, right? They're in the lower frequency vibrations, which is a lower dimension. And that's why they can't discern truth from falsehood, and why you can give them all the facts and truths and evidence that you want, and none of it makes a mark, because you're literally operating in different dimensions. You can call it dimensions of consciousness. That works too. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. And should people draw any parallel between, 3D, 4D space-time reality or 5D consciousness or anything like that? Is there an overlap here, or is it different?
There is, but I think it just serves to confuse people. I mean, I think 5D's kind of become this like overblown, memeable, Trump's playing 5D chess and 5D ascension. And that's all confusing to people. So I tend to steer away from that. I mean, you could say that's accurate, but it's not. People get the wrong idea, right? If you think, oh, I'm in 5D or I'm going to be in 5D, like most people think of it as a different place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not. Right. This is you could call 5D heaven. Right? That would be probably the most accurate way to say that's what 5D is. It's a high vibratory frequency. But most people think of heaven as this is a place where people go after they die. So that completely destroys, the metaphor. So I tend to shy away from them, but you can go in that direction.
Okay.
If you'd like, if you want to. In this, so what's happening, right? When people talk about the age of Aquarius or the golden age or new earth or Nova Gaia, is that what's happening right now is these timelines, these frequencies on the planet are running parallel to each other. So it's like they're two different train tracks, if you will, two trains that are side by side. And right now, and this has been going on, didn't just start today or something, right? It's been going on for years. Some people say it started in 2012 after the 1221 Mayan calendar thing. but it's now becoming more palpable to people, and it's going to continue to become more palpable. But the point is that you can right now and for the foreseeable future, and I haven't heard anybody give a definitive time or date, but I think it's within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be able to jump between old Earth and new Earth, depending on the frequencies that we're holding, and move between the two parallel timelines. But then eventually the tracks are they're ever so gradually diverging from one another. And we're going to reach a point, and who knows when this is going to be exactly. Let's say sometime between now and 2037 is kind of the window of time that I've heard, is that you won't be able to jump. So it's whichever timeline you choose, that's the one you're going to be on going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So it seems like you're suggesting that there's these two modes of consciousness, Vetus Gaia and Nova Gaia, whether they are equal to those things or just related to those things, perhaps. And Vetus Gaia is associated with old Earth energies, like things that we've talked about in the lower consciousness lenses: blame, worry, doubt, complaining, etc. Nova Gaia is associated with higher energies, like things we mentioned there: faith, compassion, etc. And these things, these modes exist at the same time. Like you can be in either one by choice. And you're saying that you can, for the next 8 to 10 years, it's going to be possible to like jump between, but they're diverging, and you're going to get stuck on one of the tracks. Is that it?
Right. Yeah. And here's an even better way, just so this doesn't seem too woo-woo and airy-fairy to people. We've always been able to do this, right? It's never been the case that we haven't been able to jump between these timelines, if you will, these dimensions, right? It's just that they're starting to diverge now, right? So you could be happy and enthusiastic 1 minute and depressed and sad and worried in the next minute. And that's always been, the case. We've had free will to choose which frequency we want to be in. And, if you can bring heaven to earth, that's somebody who's like fully embodies the Nova Gaia timeline, if you like. It's just that what's happening now is that the population of Earth, right, has been so ground down in the past that there needs to be a split, if you will, for people who want to stay playing in that ground down version of old Earth, which is, by the way, very fun and exciting for a lot of souls. Or if you want to shift out of, in other words, we've had enough of the separation, the suffering, the competition, the limitation, and all the things that the hallmarks of lower frequency mentions. And there is a segment population that is greater than half doesn't want to play in those films any longer.
Mm-hmm.
As hard as
it seems like
is to believe.
If I can hazard a guess here, it seems like a timeline is kind of like the continued living in a certain dimension of consciousness for a prolonged period of time, shared by a large group of people, right? Like if a whole big group of people just continue to live in these higher consciousness dimensions for a long time, and then just basically operate life in that together, it'll form literally a timeline. And then if a whole group of other people stay in lower consciousness and just go off together and live in that would be like a timeline. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yep. You could, in the Bible, Jesus says, he talks about my father's house, my father's mansion has many rooms. It's the same idea, right? So you can choose what you want to experience, right? Based on your frequency, which is your timeline or your dimension. It's always been the case. And this is something I mentioned maybe 20 or so odd podcasts ago, and got a chuckle out of Matt when I mentioned it. But the idea is that eventually, if you continue to lean into trying to get your frequency up, and the woo and the new agey idea is raise your vibes, right? Raise your vibration. That's that's what people get teased about who aren't into new age or woo woo ideas. But that's what this is all about, right? If you want to if you're tired of the suffering, the death, the limitation, the decay, the disease, right? If that's no longer something interesting to you, then that would be effectively your mission would be to raise your vibration, which again, it's the woo way of saying it. But, the question is like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Right? Like for most people, right? They don't want to feel scared and worried and angry and frustrated and resentful and all those things if they realized they had a choice. So that the comment I made was that eventually you're going to lose the ability to make those choices if you get on and stay on the Nova Gaia timeline. So in a sense, you're losing some of your free will.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And where do you get this idea from that it's going to get harder and that it's going to be a divergence and that it's going to be impossible to switch? Like, where does that come from?
Well, it's because you wouldn't want to make that. You become so conscious and aware that you would recognize that making that choice is detrimental to your well-being.
Mm-hmm. And how about the other way, like from low consciousness up to the higher consciousness?
Well, the people who stay on the old Earth timeline, right, will continue to have that full range of free will. Like they can choose to be angry, sad, depressed, worried, etc.
Oh, okay. But it seems like you're saying it would be impossible for them to even switch over to the Nova Gaia timeline. Is that because you said it would be so far apart?
Well, yeah, in roughly 10 years. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We just simply won't be occupying the same space in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I can sense that in, because when I'm talking to people these days, I'm talking about these like new technology, right? New apps and technology that people can use and how it facilitates, just higher vibrational living, right? Like I'm talking about like new economic models. I'm talking about peer-to-peer content sharing. And people are just like not able to jump over and like get in the space that I'm talking about. Right. So it seems like I'm just diverging like so far away that like, I'm like, so do you know about like the patient capital peer-to-peer blue sky protocol? And they're like, zoop, it's not possible to make that jump. Is that where you're getting at?
Well, in a sense, right? I mean, they still have plenty of time to catch up. Right? It's not like it's over for them because they don't get it today, right? Like everybody's in a different level.
So you reckon that because, as we said, like this prolonged occupation of this dimension by a lot of people, like we're just going to take off like into the stratosphere with just totally different perspective, and people who don't join are just going to be like not able to even comprehend or join in on that. The gap will just be too big.
Right. It's going to get, as time proceeds, it's going to get harder and harder and harder to make that jump. So, maybe 7 years from now and you're having that same conversation, it's like you're speaking a foreign language to them, right? I can't even register what the heck you're talking about. I have no idea what it's going to look like. I'm just throwing out a random idea there.
Sure.
But yeah, that's it. Right. It's just it's a function. It's always a function of your state of consciousness and, seeing through. The reason the majority of people are seeing that things are off, which is what we opened with, right? The reason that's happening is because collective consciousness as a whole is rising. Right? So you have to fight against the direction the majority of humanity is headed right now. Right. You have to really try hard to continue to be depressed and worried and angry and resentful and blah, 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 right? It's getting the pressure to break those habits is becoming greater and greater and greater. That makes sense? Yeah.
And I see next you have the higher your frequency goes, the more untouchable you become.
Yeah, that's the biblical verse. I can never remember how it's exactly written, but it's ye who go through the valley of death and the slings and arrows flying all around you and you can't be touched, but if you're walking with God, right? That idea. That's basically it. As hard as that is to believe. And we've talked about that in a previous podcast as well, right? Like you could walk through, a ghetto with, rival gangs firing guns back and forth at each other. And if you weren't in the least bit worried or scared, somehow they couldn't shoot you no matter what. You're just like literally in a different frequency and timeline than the people trying to kill each other. That's the idea.
Yeah. I remember like partway through COVID, I was like, COVID? I'm not gonna get COVID. Like maybe some people will get sick, but I'm not gonna get sick. I'm not gonna get some flu. And I saw this clip on, I don't know, YouTube or whatever, and there were these two women, Americans, and they were like, we can't get COVID. We're in a different vibration. Our vibration is too high. We can't get COVID. And so the people interviewing them were like, I guess what you call liberals or something like that, or Democrats or something. And they were like, that's so ridiculous. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah. Yeah, that was your best defense, right? Right. And that goes to the whole Prentice Mulford thing about, vibrating with the majority, vibrating with the mass consciousness mentality, right? Whoever those people being interviewed, weren't doing that, right? They were immune to the mind virus that spread around for those 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we proceed on to this section 2? Gaia is shifting.
Yeah. And I think this is a section that Matt is not going to add his brand to, but I will do it loudly and proudly. Maybe he will. Who knows? We'll find out. I don't want to speak for him. But so here's the basic idea that no one can argue with, is that we're all made of Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, right? Every part of us, our bodies, is made up of the elements and substances of Mother Earth. So, distinguishing yourself from Mother Earth, even though there's a clear boundary between your body and, the ground and whatever, the plants and the trees, right? Technically speaking, we're all made of the same stuff. And the idea is that Mother Earth is shifting. What's really causing this is that Mother Earth is shifting out of this dark Kali Yuga timeline or dimension and moving back towards greater light. And in short, if you want to stay with Mother Gaia on Earth, then you have to shift with her because you're made of her. So you're being exposed to the light just as she is. Is that making sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't know what the truth of this reality is, whether there's a sphere or a flat plane or what it's made of, whether there's a Mother Gaia. I really don't claim to know anything here, so I get your analog. Let me put it that way.
Yep. So that's just another way to think about this, right? So the people who don't make the shift or get exposed by the light but want to remain in the lower frequencies, they won't be able to survive, right? Too much light is effectively what's, going to force people to change or not stick around. And it's not like they just go on to a different Mother Earth, effectively, right? Different version. They continue on with whatever lessons they have to learn and karma they have to discharge and so forth. So it isn't like it ends for them. So in a way, there's not a wrong choice or a bad choice, right? So a lot of people, as they will call new souls, even though we've talked about this before too, there's no such thing as an old soul and a new soul. What that really implies is that people who haven't had as many embodiments on Earth would be a new soul, whereas people that have lived hundreds or thousands of different embodiments on Earth would be considered old souls. So we've had enough of the roller coaster, dark and light, good and evil, up and down thing, and we want to shift into something a little bit more similar to what the original design was, way back long before recorded history, which we won't talk about. You following along?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I repeat what I said before, but like I can relate to this feeling of wanting to experience something different. Like as if I want to experience any longer this whole government, bank, medical institution, legal system, and live as peasants and shake our fists at the rulers. Like, yeah, boring. Like, okay,
Right.
happy to participate in the group of people making a parallel system to that.
Right. So people like Matt and people that listen to this podcast, and obviously other people around the world that are tired and they're seeing the corruption and the deception and the lies, right? These are the ones that have had enough. And these are the ones that are really seeing, right, the inexplicable anomalies arising right now, right? They're seeing it in living technicolor, like everything. And I always point to Candace Owens just to say she sees it so well now, right? That and again, she's a popular podcast, so she's bringing along a group of people, her subscribes. He's made the comment, several times now in the past few years. It's like they're not even trying to fool us anymore. Their narratives are so stupid, right? None of it makes any sense, right? So she's seeing it clearly. Whereas the people that are, wanting to go along with whatever narratives there are and not seeing that, right? They're the new souls, or they're the ones who want to continue to play this game of dark and light. Following?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we knocked out that section. Yeah? Clear?
Yep. Sure. Yeah, I was just looking through. Okay, so section 3, all the crap has to come out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well,
so,
it just kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, the suggestion here is that the transition into full Nova Gaia timeline living requires all the hate, fear, regret, and all that crap gets fully processed in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's right.
That's what you're getting at?
That's what I'm getting at. And this, right, we can, for those of you who have studied any number of, esoteric spiritual traditions or even exoteric, you understand this notion of doing the inner work, right? That's what it's always been about. And, that's the same idea as cleaning up your vibration. That's how the New Agers phrase it. Again, same idea, right, is that what we have done and accumulated over our many lifetimes on Earth, it becomes our baggage or the karma that we're holding on to. And I think, my favorite way to frame this is with the I Am Saint Germain material, which is effectively we have misqualified the pure I Am Presence God energy. That's what we do, right? When we can't deal with rebalancing or transmuting that misqualified energy, is that we store it, right, in our bodies. And that becomes effectively our diseases and so forth, and our decay, our disintegration. So all of that inner work that you used to be able to effectively, it was a choice that people made, right, to take their spiritual journey and do the inner work. It's now being forced upon everybody. If you want to stay on Nova Gaia, right? If you want,
though not in really an uncomfortable way, right? Like it's like the energy to do that is being supplied. Like it's becoming easier to do it. You would have to literally make a painful choice to not do it at this point.
Well, I don't know if I'd characterize it like that exactly. Think about all the stuff that people, the shame, the guilt, the repressed things, the traumas, right? All those things that people have been holding down their whole lives, right? I'll say it's going to be easier for younger people, for sure. The people who've been holding and repressing things for, decades, right? They've made a clear choice to not deal with or not integrate those things back into, right? So they haven't transmuted that energy. And the pressure to transmute it is, while it's growing greater, right? Their resistance to that pressure may still be equally as strong. That makes sense?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. If the energy is like, if you put up equal resistance, then fine. But yeah, there would be a certain group of the population that it's going to be easier for.
Right. This is a big part of my book that I'm writing. It would take forever to go through this, but it's going to be about 10 chapters. But yeah, it's all those things that you don't want to come up, that you want to push down, those feelings, those memories of things that didn't go your way, traumas, things that, happened in the past that were, not to your liking. Those things are coming up for review. That's what inner work is, of course, right? You meditate, you do the mindfulness practices, right? You do the prayers, whatever your, particular mantras, whatever your choice has been. All those things are designed to loosen up that trauma that we're holding on to. And that's what rising in the light that Mother Earth is doing, is forcing out. So it has to come up and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just on this topic, just this precise topic of the crap coming out, like, in reflection, that's what my course that I made 6, 7 years, I don't know, years ago, called The Back Pain Miracle was about. I mean, it's just focused on like the crap that's stored specifically in your muscles, particularly around the hips and back and stuff like that. But yeah, like if someone wants to, get a course on, causing that stuff to come out, you can get it at the Mind Blown Zone. It's The Back Pain Miracle, and it also comes with a book called Conscious Movement, The Key to Releasing Pain. So lots of good material on this precise topic there. Just look in the courses section on the mindblowenzone.com.
That's right. That's the same thing, right? The only difference between now and the past 10 millennia is that it's no longer like a conscious choice. That's the only thing that's changed. That makes sense? I hope that it does. You understand what I'm saying?
You're suggesting that it's getting forced out in some way? Like if you say it's not a conscious choice, it's just forced out?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's being forced up and out. Now, of course, if you resist it, then that's what ends up looking like a disease, right? The continued choice to repress and resist, right, will eventually manifest as turbo disease, for example, right?
Mm-hmm. And that becomes so obvious once you've been in this stuff for a long time. It's so clearly obvious that that's the cause of disease. You just keep bad feelings around, and then you get sickness in your body.
Right.
Very clear.
Right. So there's tons of spiritual support and calling on avatars, and there's so many ways to get through this. And again, the purpose of this podcast is not only to open our new season up, but it's to help people understand what the media, the government, academia is never going to tell you, that this is what's happening. This is why things seem weird. This is, and so, the outer world is a reflection of the collective inner worlds of all the humans on the planet, and everybody, right? So everybody is dealing with some form of, inner change that needs to happen, some form of release. And that's like, if you want to think of it like in a purely physics, standpoint, scientific standpoint, it's causing things to wobble in a sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You follow that?
Yep. Oh yeah.
So that's what's going on. And again, the revolution won't be televised. And, I'd love for this information to be told to the humanity, but apparently, the powers that be still have enough control that this is only flows on the, new agey, spiritually woo-woo-y channels, but it's everywhere. It's been everywhere for a long time now. It's been a good 2 years that this has been almost the only topic that's being discussed. That's how it's universal and almost singularly this topic. And they're basically saying it's time. I was just going to say it's time to tell everybody. It's no longer, a secret, if you will. Go ahead.
I was just going to add in that, you mentioned that this stuff's not televised. Yeah, and exactly. That's part of the Vetus Gaia timeline, right? So if people stay in Vetus Gaia timeline, they'll live in this timeline where stuff about Nova Gaia isn't televised. But in the Nova Gaia timeline, revolving around all the people who are participating in that, there'll be technologies that we use that are pumping out this stuff plain as day, and it's just natural to consume, or not consume, but like be exposed to content about this.
Right. You think about our last podcast, right? It's time to take your attention off the establishment. And then, we meant it like completely, because it's just, they're completely wrong about everything. Always kind of have been, but now they're really wrong about everything. And I just want to tie in before we hit record tonight. I was telling Matt that, the channels, there's just numerous channel resources have been saying for the last 3 to 6 months that we're going to get disclosure, alien extraterrestrial disclosure is going to be widely accepted and known around the world next year. And in order for that to happen, right, you would think that the mainstream institutions are going to have to share that, right, with everybody. So, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be through the means, the internet is not going to be what it was, in a year from now. And it's just going to be so easily accessible by so many people that's going to become, kind of the harbinger of truth is going to be anything and everything but the mainstream. But I could be wrong. Maybe the mainstream is forced to acknowledge it and talk about it. Who knows? But interesting times ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look out for episode 62. The internet will be unrecognizable in 2027, because that's going to talk about all the technology that's going to be present.
Yeah, it's coming fast, and Matt's spearheading it. He's going to be so far ahead of us, he's not even going to be able to communicate with us at some point. But yeah, there's probably a couple 100,000 more Matts out there that are all taking advantage of the huge changes in AI and capabilities, and it's going to be an exciting time ahead for sure. On the Nova Gaia timeline, of course. Maybe it won't be so exciting on the Vetus Gaia timeline.
Okay. Do you still need to cover the last 3 bullets here in section 3?
Well, let's take a glance. All right. I was just saying, yeah, these feelings that we're, repressing, right? It comes in waves, right? So we have crashes, then calm, then crashes. So that's been going on for a long time. You can tie that to the kind of COVID, whole COVID scenario for those 3 years that very much tied to these big waves. And a lot of crap came up and out during that period. It isn't as stark now as it was then, but who knows what's next. I think we got the diagnostic nailed here. You're getting better. Yeah. So that's, the signpost that you're releasing is when you're not as easily or readily upset, angered, frightened, etc., about things that you were in the past. So it's like the edge has come off. It just takes the edge off. When you release it, you can still think about or remember whatever this thing that bothered you for so long, and there's like no energetic spark to it like there used to be. That's how you're releasing. Make sense?
Certainly does. All too well.
All right. We're on to section 4 then.
Okay. Section 4. We agreed to be brainwashed. Now we're being unbrainwashed. And I will mention that we have podcast. I'm just checking the number. That's very much about this topic of being brainwashed. Just going to get the number.
Back in the 30s, right?
It's 35. It's called Did We Agree to Be Brainwashed?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We won't tell you the conclusion. Well, we'll tell you the conclusion to that, but it's still worth listening to. But the short answer is, yeah, we did. And this is what you'll hear in spiritual communities. They call it the veil of forgetfulness. We had to pass through the veil of forgetfulness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even if you just take a simple look at it when someone's a child, they just accept all the things that they're told. That's an agreement.
Yeah, that's one of the rules of the game, of coming to Earth.
Come here, we're going to tell you a whole bunch of fake crap. That'll be the start of the game.
Yeah. That's basically it. So this if you like, right, what's going on now, the reason for the inexplicable anomalies and the mainstream narrative not making a whole lot of sense and so forth that a lot of people are seeing now is a process of unbrainwashing or debrainwashing. I don't know which prefix is better for that. Yeah, we're being debrainwashed. But the simpler way to say that is we are remembering what we agreed to forget in order to come play this game. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on. In other words, there's nothing new under the sun. We're not going to learn anything new. And that's kind of how spiritual progress works is as you climb the ladder of awakening, when you climb the consciousness lenses, it's like you just have these moments where you're like, yeah, duh, that's totally the way things are. It's like I knew that, but apparently I didn't know it because for the first 30 years of my life or whatever, I behaved in a way contrary to what I knew. It's very strange how that happens, but you'll get hit with a piece of truth, and it'll just be obvious to you. You're like, yeah, I always knew that somehow. Somehow I knew it. So it doesn't arrive as this amazing revelatory information. It arrives like, yeah, duh. Of course that's the truth. So that's kind of what everybody's moving through as a collective, not just people who have consciously chosen, right, to debrainwash or unbrainwash themselves. With me?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah, we shouldn't forget that our eternal state is perfect joy and freedom, right? That's our natural state, right? So if you're not feeling joyful and free, then it's because you've been brainwashed and you're believing things that aren't true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It always felt, I think even Alexander Lowen's books, he talks about this, feels like the joy of childhood was lost. Like, what happened to that? Yeah,
that's right.
I feel like this practice is trying to get that back. Like, oh, what's going on here? I just soaked up a whole bunch of nonsense crap, and now I feel all bad. Ugh. Get rid of this so I don't have it anymore. Get back to that blank slate.
All right. I always use the analogy, like if somebody clunked you in the head just right and gave you global amnesia, right? You'd be totally happy. There's just be nothing at all to bother you. You'd be totally happy and free. Now your family would all be around you, like, why don't you remember me? And I'm your mother and I'm your wife. You know what I mean? And you'd have no knowledge of any of that, right? It would all be clunked out of you. You'd just be happy to go for a walk and have a nice dinner and, sleep in a comfy bed, and life would be grand for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So It's all the brainwashing, right, that has accumulated for us that causes us to willfully choose, unwittingly, but willfully choose to feel badly. And, these next two bullets, I have to say them, right? So this is not taking a stab at anybody in particular, but, for those people who are loyal, establishment, exoteric, popular Christian believers, right? And there's still hundreds of millions of them out there, maybe billions, I don't know. But there's a very common idea that someday Jesus is going to come down out of the clouds and gather them all up, and they're the true believers. And right, that's they're all waiting for that, right? So it's going to be devastating to them over the course of the next 5 to 10 years to realize that whole narrative and idea was cabal brainwashing. It's not what the second coming of Christ means in the least. And yet that's what most people believe that are loyal Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Likewise,
I'll let something after you do the atheist one.
Not to pick on just the Christians, and and other religions have similar ideas and stories that they think they're gonna. Basically, it's the savior complex, right? And so the atheists, they have the same savior complex. They think science is gonna, academia is gonna pull them out, right? And they've consumed virtually nothing but cabal scientism their whole lives, and when they're going to have the same level of devastation as they start to realize that there's actually, the substrate or basis of reality is non-material, right? So they're going to have the Christians will have a much easier time with that idea because they, of course, have the notion of the soul, the afterlife, and so forth. So we're going to, in other words, the moral of this, I guess, is that we're going to exist in some very destabilized societies for a period of time as these realizations start to dawn on people in the upcoming 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you going to say?
Well, just one quick thing, and then the main thing. With atheists, or not atheists, but like science people, right? Those people, they've never done science in their life. Or let's say barely done any science in their life. They've only read the writings of, a captured institution that claims to be science. And, they're going to find that out. As you wrote here, it's going to be devastating.
Yeah, it's coming. I mean, it's things are destabilizing quite some time, and it's just, things are rattling and shaking. Only so many fingers can get put in the crack of the dam before it gets too big. That's what's coming.
And just on this word destabilizing, was I talking to you that we talked about the saying, hold your horses? And did you say that to me, or was it someone else?
I think somebody else. I don't recall.
I think it could have been my wife. I'm not sure. But someone said, do you know why the phrase is hold your horses? I was like, I don't know. They said, because the horses aren't stable. You have to, they're not. And then I was like, oh, that's why, right. If they're not stable, that's why you need horses to be in a stable. So the horses are stable.
There you go. Yeah.
You've written, the unbrainwashing is destabilizing, right? So when you first hear that word destabilizing, you just think, oh, I'll be off balance, right? But it's also, you'll be out of a stable. And, in a stable, the horses are kept, right? They can't go anywhere. They're safe and they're stable, but they're kept and they're not free. So, right. When we say this unbrainwashing is destabilizing, it's got a double meaning here. You'll actually be out of the stable.
Right. The cabal and the controlling forces have had humanity all wrapped up in their perfect little stable for millennia. So, yeah.
Just a little philology there.
Starts to become harder to ignore. That, to me, the ET disclosure thing is going to be, massively destabilizing. As fun as it's going to be for me and you, right? It's going to be, it may not be so fun down at your local mall or grocery store or something, right? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But, I think it's safe to say that, it's going to, even people who, believe in other forms of life and intelligence and so forth, they're going to be angry because the government covered it up for so long. And, just imagine that, right? The trust in government's going to go from 12% to 2%. Mm-hmm. So who knows what that looks like? The only word that describes it perfectly is that things are going to be destabilized. The horses are going to be out of the stable, kicking and screaming.
Okay. Earth has been in a dark corner, moving into the light, and when the light hits the darkness is exposed.
Right.
So
that's the Kali Yuga. Go ahead.
When you say Earth has been in a dark corner, are you talking metaphorically, or are you talking about positionally?
No. Yeah, I would say both, but yeah, for the purposes of this podcast, yeah, literally. We have,
like, when you say moving, are you talking about like 3D space movement, or some other meaning of moving?
Yeah. Literal movement of the location of Earth closer to the source of life or light, the sun, however you want to think about it. There's a lot of truth to climate change, right? It's true. We are warming up and we are getting more light, so on and so forth. It has nothing to do with the terrible junky catalytic converter cars we drive around or the aerosols we use, as our academics would like us to believe. Right? But yeah, it is true that things are warming up. And that's because we're being exposed to greater light, which is disinfecting the corruption and deception. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't this moving close to the sun, I guess this isn't the focus of the podcast, so maybe just a brief answer, but doesn't this make a lot of assumptions about the metaphysics of the universe and or just the physics of it, the solar system and that?
Well, I don't know what you're driving at. Rephrase, please.
We're not this podcast relevant anyway. It's just
Okay.
nitpicking. Just leave that alone for now.
Okay.
So yeah, the visible signs of this are, more light, right? If you get, if we're written, the light hits the darkness is exposed. The visible signs of that are the institutional collapse, right? So when we said at the beginning, people are noticing something's shifting, something's off, something's not like it used to be. Yeah. Like all the institutions are totally collapsing. Like nobody likes any corporation anymore. Nobody likes any government institution or medical institution. When I say nobody, I don't mean that's just the direction it's heading. So institutions based in deception get uprooted as they're exposed, trust at all-time lows across the board. And I'll let you take this concept of that being a good thing.
Yeah, well, that's what we're hoping that this podcast relates to the listeners, right? Is that it sounds like a horrible thing, doesn't it? Like that's what's keeping all the horses in their stables, is our trusted, valiant, benevolent institutions that look for our interests. It's the dominant of our institutions for mid-millennia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so saying, right, if you went out to your local mall or whatever and interviewed 1,000 people and you said, do you think if our medical institutions collapse, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I bet you'd get, 950 answers that would say that's a bad thing. Right? Maybe 50 people would be aware of the, corruption in our medical institutions. And maybe with government, it might be, at this point in time, maybe you'd get like a 50-50 response. Right. Mm-hmm. But the idea that the medical is the big one, right? That's the one where, people's health and so forth is, on the line. And the idea of, I consider that the most trusted institution that we have today is our healthcare institutions. And the collapse of that is highly destabilizing, and people, it sounds like a bad thing to people, right? Without any awareness that the truth about disease and what causes it and how to deal with it and so forth is much, much simpler than what we've all been taught, including our doctors. Right. So that's the kind of the point of this podcast, is to get more people recognizing that the collapse isn't a bad thing. And, I've always used the analogy that, even though Matt had explained it to Matt, but it's like if you're a gardener, right, how if you've planted food or flowers or so forth before, usually when you go out in the spring, right, there's a bunch of weeds in your garden, and you got to weed the garden right before you plant if you want your your food or your flowers to grow, got to get all those weeds out of there. They suck up all the nutrients in the water, and that's effectively what's happening. That's what the Nova Gaia timeline is we have the weeds are our established institutions, and they need to be, I don't know if eradicated is the right word, but we've talked about, the parallel free market economy. And I think there's going to be there's going to be openings for parallel institutions to arise as these other ones are collapsing. That's how I understand things are going to happen. That making sense?
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're at 54 minutes. Do you just want to quickly mention that last bullet in section 4, and then we'll hit section 5?
I already did. I already hit that one. So yeah, we're
hit that one. Okay, section 5 then. Section 5, the end of Vetus Gaia. You create the timeline you ride. So hallmark Vetus Gaia energies: competition instead of cooperation, limitation instead of possibility, scarcity instead of abundance, fear instead of joy. That's why we said at the beginning, it's never before have we been able to so acutely sense the difference. right? It's becoming clear that we're able to have a different style of living. Like we can actually all cooperate with each other. We don't have to be in this like corporate competition. We don't have to feel that everything's limited and everything's impossible. We can open up to that pretty much anything you want to create is possible. We don't have to be in scarcity anymore. Don't have to feel like, oh, there's not enough money to go around. Elon Musk has all the money. The only way to get the money is to tax Elon Musk and have him distribute his money to us because there's only enough for that. And fear, it's like you don't have to be in fear anymore. Like that's a choice. Like people have acted like fear is like just a default. Well, there's all these bad things in the world, so you have to be afraid, right? You're automatically afraid by the existence of fearsome things. No, it's not true.
Right. This is your horse stable analogy, right? And this is the brainwashing analogy. It's literally all brainwashing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you believe the brainwashing, then you draw the evidence to yourself that matches your beliefs, and then you thus experience what you believed. So the de-brainwashing is people, more and more people learning that's the way this reality works.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who land on Nova Gaia are all going to be aware of this, right? Some to greater extents, some to lesser extents, but all be aware. Basically, it's an end of victim consciousness. You can't be in victim consciousness and go to Nova Gaia. Mm-hmm. Those two things are oil and water, right?
Yep.
This is Matt before a new Earth. What is that?
That's not that interesting. I just think one of the things that is clear in the transition is you feel present. Like when I first read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, okay, right.
I was like, whoa, I'm present. What? I'm present. Like I sense reality. I feel things. Yeah. So the premise, everything isn't falling apart because the world is going to hell. It's falling apart so that it can be replaced by something 1,000,000. I don't know, that's a lot. 1,000,000 times better. You've got to see the world for what it is to be excited about what's coming. Any comment on that?
Right. Well, yeah, and so the establishment sources they're going to tell us the world's going to hell, right? Because for them, right, for the people who are invested in maintaining the status quo, maintaining the deception, the world is going to hell for them. So in a way, they'll be truthfully broadcasting on Fox and CNN and ABC and NBC and the New York Times that things are going to hell. So they are going to hell for them, which is why we said in the previous podcast, take your attention off the establishment, unless, of course, you want to stick with the old Earth, Vetus Gaia timeline, which is your choice. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of faux Nova Gaia YouTube channels out there where people, they pretend like it seems like maybe they're a first force for good, but like all their channel is about is like, oh, look what the World Economic Forum's done today. Ugh. Can you believe they're doing this? It's so terrible. Like that's not actually a Nova Gaia energy, right? Just reporting on how shitty everything is Vetus Gaia.
Yeah, and I think it's a super important point. That's why we did the previous podcast, right? I think if you continue to listen to, right, the establishment and the current institutions in power, they're effectively going to lead you on the path towards more limitation, suffering, fear, and scarcity. That's where they want you to go, because that's the world where they control you. So, yet another reason to turn off your TV sets. If you haven't heard enough from us already, right?
And so I think this is important, like Brad's test. It's a test for knowing whether you're experiencing Nova Gaia already or not. You want to lay this down, Brad?
Sure. And it's important, right? Like you don't have to do anything special, right? Except be happy, enjoy your life, you're enthusiastic. You're not fixated on what's wrong in the world, right? Whatever that might be. And, of course, we've said over and over again in the last 2 or 3 podcasts that the hallmark energies of the Nova Gaia timeline are compassion, right? Which is, in other words, it replaces judgment, right? Of people that aren't as aware as you are. You have to be compassionate towards them. But the real hallmark, and this is the one that is going to shatter the current paradigms, is being authentic. And we've all been heavily, heavily brainwashed and trained to go along to get along, to fit into the herd, to be a pack member. Don't speak out. Don't go against, the majority. And being authentic is literally the exact opposite of that. So those are if you're doing what you love and you don't care what other people think about you, and you're not worried about what's going on around the world that you can't control, you're on the Nova Gaia timeline. That's it.
That's great.
Could it be any simpler?
And you've written like that you're on the timeline, but to be permanently established is when the outer no longer shakes your inner.
Yeah. So that's going to be consciousness lens 4 or 5, which we talked about in the previous podcast. When you stop blaming other people and yourself and get up and out of that, then you're into this territory. When you're done with the blame game.
The end of be lame.
Be lake. The lake. Is that what it was?
No, I said be lame. Lame. To be lame.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
it's reminded me of you. Have you seen that Key and Peele, that comedy team? Those guys.
Oh, I don't like those guys.
They did one episode where the guy can't say anybody's names, and he's like calling out names, and the last one is he's like be Lake Smith or whatever. Be Lake.
Yeah, that's why I don't like those guys, because I'm like that's basic humor.
Well, the kid finally looks up and he goes, yeah, Blake. I don't know. No, that one was funny. Anyway, all right. Well, there we have it. Nova Gaia timeline. Get on it if you want to feel good. If you want to play the games of the old Earth, then
wait, Brad, just wait a tick. Like, oh my God, the fucking garbage truck is going behind me right now, just making an absolute ruckus.
Well, all right.
It's like, even if, like, I don't know, maybe the microphone picking up a little bit of it, but it's freaking distracting from me either way. So
yeah,
wait a minute.
I don't hear anything. Yeah. I'll wait a tick. Wait a tick.
Probably just one more minute.
Very Australian, Aussie way to say things. Wait a tick.
Tick of the clock.
So while we're waiting, so let me ask you this. When somebody swings at a pitch, right, a baseball, you know what like American baseball is, right? And they just barely hit part of the ball. What do you say in Australia? They nipped it, tipped it, ticked it, or nicked it?
Oh,
or something else.
In cricket, we say you nicked it.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you say in baseball?
It's usually tipped or ticked.
Ugh. Terrible. That's Vetus Gaia.
That's Vetus Gaia.
All right, let's continue.
I always laughed. People said ticked. He ticked it. No, he didn't. He tipped it. Anyway, go ahead.
Nicked it. All right, conclusion, yeah? We'll break into this. I'll just intro. All right, So let's conclude on this. My conclusion would be that this introductory podcast, 61 of season 2, episode 1 of season 2, but 61, and it's of season 2 still, is like it's a demarcation, right? Like we're now transitioning to podcasts that are not about pointing out the problems of Vetus Gaia. We are establishing new, better ways of doing things in Nova Gaia Timeline. So we are on Nova Gaia Timeline in this podcast.
Forevermore. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I hope what people take away from this, right, is the high degree of optimism, right, and enthusiasm that, things that have held us back, and we can all name a million of them, and we have named a million of them in previous podcasts, right? Those things are no longer holding us back if we're ready to step into, right, the Nova Gaia Timeline. Be our authentic selves, be compassionate, be enthusiastic, if you can just choose, right, those energies, then the wave of energy behind you is so great now that it'll literally lift you up and carry you into whatever it is that makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds too good to be true. And everybody is hesitating right now as of July 22nd to 2026. It's hard to believe, but it's like if you're just taking incremental movements towards that thing that you want to do, that you love, that makes you happy, as long as you're doing that and you're taking steps in that direction, then you're going to get swept up in the Nova Gaia timeline. You just have to believe in yourself and stop looking at all the things from the past that have seemed to stop you from making that choice. And we'll do podcasts along these lines many times in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
Yep. Well, sounds great. I have nothing more to add other than, hey, man, take your power back. That's how you get on the Nova Gaia timeline at themindblowingzone.com.
That's right. It's what it's all about. We've been talking about it for years now, and now it's for real. Totally for real. So absolutely. Taking your power back is getting on the Nova Gaia timeline, is becoming your true, authentic self, which is what it was always all about.
Yeah. Just click courses or manifesto. Either of those links and take you to the video that introduces that. Okie dokie. Well,
right on.
Thanks, Brad. And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Nova Gaia timeline. Yeah. Being ironic. Yep, thanks, ironically mate. Cringe there.
Be ironically cringe. Good way to close it out. Hopefully everybody gets a little something out of this. We look forward to your questions, by the way, and comments. If you're not quite following it, we'll certainly do a clarification podcasts because this is a big idea, capital BIG, and doesn't readily land the first time you hear it. But give it some thought, and more importantly, put some of the ideas into practice and see what happens. A lot of magic. Anyway, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Bye-bye.